I won't belabor the point, but this is the hardest video I've made so far. I've been collecting footage of circular polarizer filters in action for almost a year, and this topic has been in the works in my head that whole time. This tool, this filter, is ambiguous. There's not an on or off setting. It's variable, and how you use it fluctuates. When I first started using these filters, I never knew if I was even using them correctly because I wasn't totally clear on what I was trying to do. There's not an indicator on the filter saying this is 0%, this is 100%. You just have to try it and see what looks right. Now, over time, I've figured out what I think the objective is for how to enhance your photos using a polarizer filter. But I still wanted to check with some other videos to make sure I had my facts straight. And these other YouTubers basically said, this is how you can use this filter to take out reflections on cars. So now, go ahead, take out all the reflections. And that's not how I use it. And that's not how I think you get the best pictures. Reflections are what makes cars beautiful, what gives them volume and drama and form. The way you treat reflections in car photography is nuanced. Good reflections can be the most beautiful part of a car photograph, showing the ways that a car can bend light, and bad reflections can ruin your image. But I didn't see any of that nuance in these other videos about circular polarizer filters. Having a tool that enables you to control how the reflections appear in the cars you photograph is powerful, and it's a topic worthy of exploration, so that's what we're going to do today. So first, what is a circular polarizer filter? A CPL is a filter that screws onto the lens consisting of two pieces of glass. This one is by B&W, and I have a link to it below if you're interested. I like this kind because it's very low profile, so if you had to stack another filter on there, you won't start to see the edges of the filter coming into your image. The outer glass rotates, and changing that rotation changes which types of light waves can enter the lens, which affects what the camera sensor sees. If you want a more scientific explanation, it's out there, but science is not my strong suit. A CPL changes how the sky looks, it changes how water looks, but for our purposes, we're going to focus on how it affects reflective car things, like automotive paint and glass. When we point a lens with a polarizer filter at a car, notice how the color of the car, the opacity of the glass, and the appearance of highlights all change during the rotation of the filter. A CPL is helpful with unwanted reflections, particularly with dark or medium-toned cars, which can become a mirror that shows all of your surroundings. If you're in a location with ugly things reflecting in the car, like power lines, fences, or other cars, you can rotate that filter to reduce reflections at the expense of making the car look flat. But sometimes that is a worthwhile trade-off. On this Subaru, it dramatically changed the color, evened the contrast, and minimized some ugly reflections from a busy urban environment. It actually looks like it's lit by a strobe, which might be a dramatic effect of this specific metallic paint. On this Porsche 993, turning the polarizer helps us eliminate this unsightly Chevy Trax from the passenger door. That is not a Chevy Captiva, that's a Chevy Trax. So this proves that we can just eliminate all reflections from every car to get the best possible car image. Simple, right? No. In the right lighting conditions, such as in an open area after the sun has set, a car's surface will have incredible highlights along the side surfaces. The sky is bright and clear, the ground is dark, and you're seeing the reflection of the effective horizon in the side of the car. This specular reflection, also called a specular highlight, gives the car definition and volume. People use highlight reflection terms interchangeably, but basically I'm talking about seeing the sky reflected in the side of the car. And you can make that highlight totally disappear, which we don't want to do because that's my favorite part of photographing cars. In this Mazda 3, you could erase that incredible side surfacing and make it completely dull, lifeless, shapeless, and flat. In this Ferrari 328, we can take out the reflections and make it look like a completely matte finish. There are no reflections, but there's no drama or life to this image. Is that what we're trying to do? So in practice, as with many things, it's about moderation and refinement. The first thing I'm looking for when I approach a car is I want to eliminate the big white reflections on the top surfaces of the car if they're present. If the windshield is completely white, we want to make that as transparent and dark as possible. If that's not an issue and we have a specular highlight on the side of the car, I want to use the polarizer filter to fine-tune that highlight for the perfect amount of contrast. I don't want it to be totally solid white. I want it to be a dramatic gradient with the most contrast. To me, the ideal is a thin white highlight that falls off as a gradient back to the true paint color. To me, this accentuates the shape of the car as much as possible and gives you drama and contrast, and it's kind of the optimal representation of that car. Now you may notice that when you're shooting the car at a 3/4 angle like this, sometimes the highlights on the side look good, but then the hood and windshield look bad. And if you try to adjust it for the hood and windshield, it messes up the side. The top of the car and the side of the car are different angles relative to the light source, the sky, and you can only make one of them look good.
Now a question of etiquette. As I pass, do I give you the ass or the crutch?
My solution is usually to just settle for what I think is the best compromise and live with it. Usually, if you're shooting in an open shade or golden hour lighting conditions, that compromise will be fine. It won't be glaringly bad from one surface to another. I focus on the side, and the windshield might be a little lighter than the most transparent setting possible, but it won't be too noticeable. Some people will take an exposure with the side of the car at the ideal polarizer angle and then rotate the filter and take a separate exposure for the hood and windshield and composite the two later. I don't find that very fun, so I rarely do that, although I should have with this McLaren SLR because it was the most chaotically reflective car I've ever shot in my life, and it would have helped a lot that day. If I'm shooting at a long focal length and I'm in indirect sunlight or shade, I'm always going to try with the CPL and see if that helps the image. But if you're shooting in direct sun, it's not going to have a radical effect on the photo. For example, if the sun is reflected as a giant hotspot in the windshield, no amount of rotating this thing is going to take that out. You can leave the filter on your lens, it probably won't hurt anything, but I wouldn't waste a lot of time adjusting to get better results with it. If I'm shooting wide, I personally don't use a circular polarizer filter because I don't want to risk getting the dreaded polarizer sky. With wide-angle lenses, for example, this was at 24 millimeters, the view of the lens is wider than the polarized area of the sky. So you get a blob of polarized sky in the middle of the image, which fades lighter towards the edges of the frame. This looks really amateurish, and it can be deceptively tricky to fix later on in Photoshop. So to avoid this, I don't keep a CPL on my wider lenses, and I don't really worry about it. Every situation is different. When you shoot cars, you never know what you're going to get. Car shapes, paint colors, time of day, weather, and environment can all be factors outside of your control that you need to adapt and adjust for. A circular polarizer filter allows you to take back some control in a world where so many things are outside of your control. If you're at your location, lined up to shoot the car, you have your lens mounted, and you have your camera settings dialed in, the circular polarizer filter is the last thing between you and the car, the last chance to make your image just a little bit better. Whether you are using the CPL for damage limitation to minimize ugly reflections in a messy environment, or in a perfect setting and dialing in those specular highlights to pop with maximum contrast, how you use the CPL will be different every time. What's important is to know what to look for and what you're trying to achieve to get the best possible photo, and I hope this video has helped with that. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.